Types of sports with Gigantor, football discussion on the internet.
I was, where is he? Probably would help if I brought him on the show, wouldn't it? I think it probably would. There you go. I was discussing the finer points of, boy, we both are really hairing it up today, aren't we, Tor? Jesus Christ, I just noticed that.
Big time. Went to a new barber. Hey, maybe you should come back once, not in 3 months. How about you take some off my head, jerk ass?
Give me the Egon Spangler. I feel like that's what we both fucking said. I want the Ace Ventura or you're not getting a tip. Yeah, it's rough, man. Yours is way up. Did they take any hair off that fucking head of yours?
You know what? I don't know. It grows like a weed. It looked okay for maybe 8 hours, and then it just starts shooting right back up.
Shooting right back up. Yeah. Well, here's what I'll say is you and I were having a discussion about podcasting, and it's different. Like I'm so trained for radio that dead air is like a mortal enemy in radio unless you're, Ron Bennington and you work the dead air like you're some sort of fucking Swedish masseuse. But like I'm so you're terrified of pauses, right? Like if you pause and someone's going to go, they're going to turn on Kevin Sheehan, and we can't have that. So I've been kind of trying to retrain myself a little bit because we do podcasting now. But also you were talking about how when you do your college football show, it's like you need to get out there. Like you need to have that reaction, that instant reaction, because that's what drives the numbers up. People are looking for a topic at that certain point. And so if they're searching, it's like then you come up in the algorithm and you can gain new followers. That made a lot of sense. That was actually teaching me something, which I appreciate. But I'm glad we don't do that because I got to be honest, the fucking Aaron Rodgers, Jets, Ambassador Johnson, Nathaniel Hackett, Jeff Ulbrich, clusterfuck, 7-layer carrot cake. Yeah. There was so much information coming out immediately, Tor, and I felt so differently about that story when it first happened than when I do now, because now all of the reporters have sunk their fangs into it. Like everybody's been able to kind of go through the actual details of how it happened and how it went down. And I'm still not sure if it's the right call or not, but I do feel completely differently now than I did when I initially heard about Robert Saleh getting fired. And for that, I was grateful that while we won't ever gain any new listeners or followers or watchers from that reason, we can actually have a better conversation now about it.
I can see the pros and cons of both sides of it. I am pretty still lockstep that the quarterback did not respect the head coach, and that played a big factor, especially with a quarterback that has been known to have gripes with management about not having a big enough say in the draft war room, in offseason negotiations and dealings. I think a lot of people forget how tumultuous it was in Green Bay and how frustrated he was every single offseason with leadership there. And now he's 40 and he's coming off of a Achilles injury. And I think I'm seeing him try to hold a little bit more of the power his way, believing that he has earned it to this point.
Well, then how unobjective are we thinking Aaron Rodgers is? Because he's got to know that he's the one that went out there and threw 3 interceptions, that Nathaniel Hackett is his guy. He wanted him there. I heard Mike Greenberg. The list went on for a week of people that said the reason why, so the main bone of contention, right, and we'll get into all of it, is that if the fucking owner knew that this wasn't the guy, why didn't he fire him in the offseason? And the reason that I've heard a lot of people give, Tor, is that because they knew that if Hackett was the offensive coordinator and he had to stay the offensive coordinator, that there's no way Bill Belichick or Mike Vrabel or whoever else you had on the wish list is going to take that job. They're going to bide their time because they already knew what the hand was. So I just would wonder if we're talking about, Aaron Rodgers is a megalomaniac and he wants control. It's like, well, he's not a dumb guy. Like, regardless of whether or not you agree with everything he says, I certainly don't. I think we can all agree he's kind of a smart dude. He's got to be very aware of his own shortcomings and and that's why I don't think that the Nathaniel Hackett being demoted was the straw that broke the camel's back. The part of this conspiracy theory tour where it's Aaron Rodgers got wind that Hackett was going to get demoted by Saleh, and they had a phone call with Ambassador Johnson. And of course, they didn't discuss firing Saleh because they were discussing that. And that is when they decided to make the move. I don't buy that part of it.
I'd say Hackett should have been demoted. What has the offense done in the last 2 years? Genuinely. Nathaniel Hackett's supposed to be the Aaron Rodgers whisperer. Oh, he didn't work out in Denver. We didn't have Aaron Rodgers. This is his guy. Russell Wilson is washed. Let's get him back in New York and get the New York groove going with Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson and everybody in that offense. It hasn't got going. They beat up on a bad Patriots team on a short week. Every other performance this year, lackluster. And I actually appreciate the Jets deciding to make a move and maybe decide, hey, somebody else could possibly call plays better than this doofus.
Maybe, but it's never worked before. It's never ever worked. I mean, I know Oakland has fired 2 head coaches, and the guy that came in afterwards actually did spark the team, and they did play better. That's really the only place that I see it happening. I mean, we can look when Jay Gruden was fired. I mean, go down the list of these interim head coaches that have come in. So Jeff Ulbricht's going to be the dude that, and maybe this is different. Look, what happened in fucking Washington in 2017 or whatever has nothing to do with what's happening at the Jets in 2024. We lose sight of that. I believe our buddy is here, of course, from the Sean Salisbury Show, one of the greatest moments of the week for us. We get to spend about 30 minutes with this gentleman. The great Sean Salisbury is with us on both types of sports, and there is a plethora of piñatas to discuss. Sal's, welcome. How are you, sir?
Good, guys. How are you?
Good. You're a little low in the mix, brother. You want me to turn you up, or
I'm at max on my thing. I'm at 100.
All right, let me just go ahead.
Okay.
I think if you just adjust it a little bit, it'll be all right.
Okay.
Let me turn you up in the mix. See something now.
Test 1, 2, 3.
That's way better. All right, excellent. All right, let's start with, this is what we were just discussing before you came on, Sal.
Yeah,
what we felt about the firing when it happened, when we were all gobsmacked. Nobody saw this coming. Teams don't do this, not even dysfunctional teams like the Jets. And now that we've had 2 or 3 days to suss out why it happened, who's involved, who is ultimately responsible, how different do you feel about this situation than you did when you initially learned the news?
I don't feel any different. I'll preface this. I think Aaron Rodgers has been a hell of a player, and I think he's, I still think there's some tentativeness in his game, and he's part of the problem with the way he played last week, and he admitted that. He made 3 bad decisions and throws. Listen, it's rare that we fire a guy this early in the season. I heard you guys talking about interim coaches. You're right. They don't work out very often. They just don't. The interim coach is there to just to keep things however you can and get fired. And you mentioned the Raiders. Listen, but he does have 12 games to fix it. So this is different. Normally we're heading to December, right? We're in the middle or past their bye weeks or whoever. I don't know when the last time somebody got fired. Maybe it happens more often than I think. I just feel like it's not an early season thing. But they're not moving the ball. They're not doing things. They're not playing well. And I think the leadership's lacking on there. Do I think Aaron Rodgers had anything to do? Do I think he barged into Woody Johnson, said, you fire him? No. Do I think that his presence for Nathaniel Hackett saved his job? I absolutely do. And do I think that Nathaniel Hackett should have been demoted before the season started? He shouldn't have been calling the plays. As a guy who's called the plays or been the offensive or the head coach, that has not worked. You know when he was at his best, when he was the quarterback coach at Green Bay, when LaFleur was calling the plays and they had their buddy-buddy relationship, that's when it was at its best. So maybe that'll get back to, again, and Todd Downing's had offensive coordinator experience. I believe that the Jets team's better than they are, and they're floundering, and Aaron Rodgers is not playing great football, needless to say. I think that Woody Johnson knew going into this season he was going to have a short lease on Robert Saleh, and I get it. But Saleh's been saddled with, Zach Wilson and hasn't had much going on. But there's a disconnect. Whatever it is, there's some part of the team of leadership lost. I'm not in their locker room, but I understand why it happens. I don't like seeing guys fired. I'd hire Robert Saleh as a consultant right now. I'd bring him in. He knows defense. Maybe the second time around will be fine. And I've been around guys that are not made to be head coaches. They're great assistants, and maybe that'll change the second time, just like a quarterback who gets good later on. Rodgers is part of the problem. I don't believe for 1 second that his presence didn't have something to do with all of this. Like I said, I don't think he barged in on the door until you fire him and you make sure Hackett stays here, and I want Todd Downing. And I think he's leaving that up to Ulbrich, and we'll see how that works. So, listen, it's probably somewhere in the middle. It's not the extreme either way. It usually lands in the middle. We'll see. They got to play better. We can say all we want. The defense has played decent, but the offense has been average. Garrett Wilson hasn't done his thing. They're not running the football, and Aaron Rodgers looks like just a guy right now so far this season, and he has the majority of the time. The ball's not coming out like it normally does. We'll see if that changes, and if it does, maybe the Jets make a run, but Robert Saleh will be fine. He's still getting paid, and we'll see if the Jets change makes a difference. But I wouldn't have Nathaniel Hackett calling plays either. They shouldn't have done that at the beginning of the season. We've seen a body of work that says when it comes to game day calling and putting him in the best position, he is not the guy, and he's just a guy at that. So the Jets are proving right now that they're an organization that's reeling. We'll see if another change makes a difference this early.
Here's that change that Sal's was referring to. Coach Jeff Ulbrich actually addressing the media for the first time and talking about a big change he's making with his staff.
Starting the staff after a lot of time to think about it, and did not make this decision easily by any means. I'm going to make Todd Downing the play caller for the New York Jets going forward. And this is more a byproduct of a different take on things. I'm not saying it's a better or worse take on things by any means, but just a different take on things, a fresh approach. So ultimately, Todd will have the full say on the game plan and ultimately the plays that are called within the game.
So Ulbrich's an impressive dude, Sal's, and one of the things I've read so much about this now is that Kyle Shanahan called about Jeff Ulbrich, who of course was on that staff with Saleh in the offseason, and apparently that is what piqued Woody Johnson's interest in this move, or one of the things that piqued it. But it's not a conspiracy. You're right. There's a relationship there. Hackett should have been there. He was there because Aaron Rodgers is. Of course, you're correct. But the one of the big things that immediately came up was Aaron Rodgers heard that Hackett was going to be demoted, and so that is what set the wheels in motion. He reached out. Well, they made the move the very next day after Saleh had been fired, so that couldn't have been it.
No, I think this move was going to happen regardless. I don't think that Aaron Rodgers went in there and said, you're going to do this, and I don't think that they all of a sudden – I think that they were key. I think that Hackett was on a short leash too, because I heard you guys talk before I came on about that he struggled with play calling last year. Doesn't matter. I mean, you've changed. You've got good players, and the rest of it's been a struggle. I'm sure the guy knows X's and O's. Hell, his dad, Paul, is the one who got – I mean, he recruited me at SC, and he's a big reason why I went there. And so I have a lot of respect for that family, and they grind, and his dad was a hell of a football coach. I know this. And listening to Coach talk, and I like him, and he is impressive. And I like the fact that he was succinct and said, here's the way it is. He's got all the say, and that's it. Yeah. What you do have to guard against, and I can – listen, in any job, when a guy you've been sitting in a meeting room with, ego and pride are a part of this. Okay, they just are. If somebody walks in and says, you're not – basically – it's like here, let me just compare this to Presley and Josh Hader, okay? Presley's been a closer that's been out, lights out as a closer here in Houston, and in the postseason's been lights out until this year, and they only had 2 games to play in the postseason. And when they signed Josh Hader and he was relegated to the 8th inning, you're sitting in the thing while you say, yeah, I'm just here to get outs anyway. That's a demotion. You just do. And I even talked to the GM at the Astros about it. He goes, yeah, I'm not sure. We'll see how he handles it. And Brian Presley, while he handled it as a good gentleman, deep down in his soul, you were told the other guy's better. So right now what you're saying is Todd Downing gives us a better chance to win. And so now they're going to sit in the same meeting room. You're going to have to guard. Now he's still getting paid offensive coordinator money as Hackett, but you're going to sit in the same room and they're going to go on the board and they're going to put a game plan in. And the week ago, you were the guy and your quarterback's the guy and the guy who stood for you and has been around you for a long time. So there can't help but be a little bit of disconnect. I'm anxious to see how that meeting room goes. And if all of a sudden they flourish, because you're basically being told on Sundays, you're not very good, dude.
Yeah.
I'm going to put Todd Downing in there. And Downing's been demoted before in his situation. He's been replaced as a coordinator. So I'm anxious to see how it works. And I would not discount that everything's going to be roses and everything's going to be cool, because any of us in our job, if all of a sudden you get demoted, your first thought, you're still bothered. If you're not, then you didn't care about your gig. So I'm anxious to see, like a player we asked to fit in when he's benched, how's Nathaniel Hackett going to deal with Todd Downing? And how are they going to feed off each other, knowing that Downing a week ago was in a different role and now they've just switched roles? I'm anxious to see how that works out.
Sean, we know that the captains on a football team, and primarily the quarterback, are supposed to be the mouthpiece for the head coach. And my struggle with this Saleh-Rodgers relationship is that, to a very casual eye, you could see that they were having difficulties on the sideline. You could say they were having disagreements in press conferences. What's the impact of a team when you could tell that the leader of your other 52 is not being that an effective mouthpiece for what the head coach's vision would be? Do you think that could have worn off on some of the younger players, thinking now I have to pick a side between Saleh and Rodgers? Do you think there could have been some disconnect in the locker room through the Rodgers ego to maybe lose the locker room for Saleh?
Oh, I think that exists. I think there's a great chance that that's part of it, and you have to guard against it. You're right. Listen, when that first happened, when Rodgers went up to his chest, I'm thinking competitiveness on the sideline, I wouldn't read too much into it. Now, if they beat Minnesota and Rodgers makes those throws to the right guy and not the wrong guy, Robert Saleh is still the coach and Aaron Rodgers, and we're all thinking, man, now the Jets are going to make a roll. They beat an undefeated Minnesota Viking team. But that's not the case. I think it's a great point by you that I looked into, because, being on those sidelines, sometimes people yell and scream and cuss and do all that all the time. And you say it's not that big a deal. But apparently there's a little more, it feels at least that there's a little more deep seed to it, because you talked about on different pages at the press conference and that on the field. And a lot of times I've seen players that you can be disconnected from your head coach. And I would be more concerned if the disconnection was usually it was the offensive coordinator and the quarterback, that you're not on the same page and you're fighting all the time and you just completely disagree. Because in truth, when you're the head coach and you're a defensive coach, I can promise you the head coach and the quarterback, don't spend much time together. They just don't. Maybe, you know how Belichick and Brady used to meet for an hour or two a week, in the middle of the week. I can tell you this on coaches I've loved. Very rare. Most of the time when you get called into when a coach is in a meeting, it's to tell you you're either starting or you got benched. It's not to have run around all rosy and singing Kumbaya. That's not the case. So you can exist when a head coach and a quarterback don't like each other, but may respect each other, because there's distance. There's times you'll go weeks without talking to your head coach, other than when he's walking around in the practice field. I'm talking about in the meeting rooms and the rest of it. You don't see them much. They're doing their thing. They're the head coach. They're doing all the stuff they got to do. But there is that point in time when young players are watching a guy who's 40 years old and who has a lot of player empowerment. And we've seen the movie before. Remember when Rodgers and LaFleur disagreed for a long time, right? At least that was the perception. We heard it all the time. Not on the same page. He wants out. Well, we'll let Aaron. I mean, it feels like that no matter what, that's kind of who they are. And Rodgers beats to a different drum. So you've got to learn to deal with that if you're the head coach. But do you want to deal with it? So I do think that if you were watching both, that you could say, well, am I supposed to pick a side? What's the click I'm supposed to be on? Why are my head coach and my quarterback not on the same page? If they're winning, nobody cares about Rodgers and Robert Saleh's relationship. They just don't. I was told by Tom Brady's dad on an interview when they were in New England that 17 years, it was 16 or 17 years of time into Brady's career, that Bill Belichick and Tom Brady had never had a meal together away from training table.
Wow.
His father told me that on an interview. And I said, are you kidding? So the respect, but they spent time, but maybe they weren't afterwards. There's probably great respect for each other, but they both had a job to do. They're both grinders and they did. So I never have a problem with that. Now, if you're Sean Payton and your Bo Nix, he's calling the plays. You damn well better have a relationship because you're spinning it with him in the meeting. So it can go both ways. But Rodgers is a player; he's got a lot of power and he pulls a lot of weight. And so you think the players would lean to the quarterback on offense and elsewhere. If you're winning, it takes away a lot of the problems. So I think it is. I think you got, at least for the optics part of it, it looked bad, and obviously it was worse than we thought because Robert Saleh's gone, Aaron Rodgers is there, and they think this is the solution with an interim coach and a new coordinator. Something did have to be done, though. I can't blame them. Shit, they're not doing anything. They look like just the bottom third team offensively half the time. So we'll see how it works. But Rodgers pulls a lot of weight, and I would imagine he knows most what's going on in the building. And the young players, they would pick a side and let's go, but take care of your business during the practice week and on Sundays. I don't care if you like each other.
It's so funny, Sal. You made that comparison, and you've done a lot of radio, and I've done a lot of radio, and some of the most memorable, I wouldn't know if it's the best, but some of the most successful radio I've ever done is with a guy I didn't get along with, and we certainly didn't have meals together and hang out outside. I mean, there was this giant radio show. I don't know if you remember. It was called Opie and Anthony.
Oh,
and
yeah.
One of the guys was like, "You've never been to my home. You've never met my kid. Why don't we hang out and drink beer?" And the other guy is like, we spend 5 hours a day together. We're coworkers. Like, we don't need to we don't even need to like each other to continue to do a good job and cash checks. And that's a really great point, that we outside of a locker room or outside of a very unique relationship like that, because you know what it's like to spend 3, 4, 5 hours a day doing interpersonal communication with another human being. It's like nobody does that. Like when you do a radio show, nobody shares their headspace like that. And you're like, oh, they must be brothers. They must, they take vacation. No, we're professionals going to a job. And that's what you're describing. Yeah, that's perfect.
And you may hang out at an event.
Of course.
My co-host on my show, I love him. He's a great guy. He'll come over and watch college football. But when he leaves. He's got stuff to do. I got my life. He's got his, and we come back. And I also think that there's something to be said when you're telling stories or you're doing it, that you're not around telling the same stuff all the time. That there's got to be banter. I'm not saying you don't want to be friends, but you're exactly right. How many times do you literally, whether it's show or teammate, and we all have teammates that are friends, but in truth, a lot of that's when you go to a golf tournament in the offseason. Even when you're best friends on the team, you may go have a beer once in a while, but you're going home to your wife, your girlfriend, you got other stuff you got to prepare. We overrate that you got to like and be best friends with every guy on the team. Listen, most of the guys on the team, once the career's over, will never hang out again.
Right.
They will never hang out again. Now, I'm fortunate if you build relationships in college and high school and NFL, it's fun, but it's not realistic. Well, I mean, even at work, in a regular job, whether you work if you're a salesperson, outside of an event-related part of your company, how many times do you get home and say, man, I'm going to call him. I was just with him 5 hours, and we did the show, and we laughed and had a blast, and I love him, but I'm going to go and hang out with him for 8 more hours, or her, whatever it is. I don't believe you need – I think respect's far more important than liking. I got my friends. I got my circle. I don't need 55 more of them. Now, I think it's important to have a great respect and bond on the air where you're not demeaning or shrinking somebody's personality, or in the locker room demeaning a teammate or embarrassing them. But if that was the case, we'd never have time to do anything else. If we just hung out with everybody we were with, it's like, you think if you're a lawyer, you want to talk about law all day. If you're a doctor, you want to go home and your best friend, hey, remember that surgery we had on that guy's knee? That's a story you tell when you're having a beer in the offseason at a tournament. I think it's over. I don't give a shit if Saleh and Aaron Rodgers ever talk off the field or on it, or Ulbrich. I don't care. As long as in the building, they're on the same page, getting it done. And what I also don't like, I don't like yes men. I want respect, but I don't need a bunch of coaches and players that all just agree with everything that's going on. Bullshit. If you do that, then you're going to lose 5 more. You need to challenge the group. You need to challenge the coach. Coaches need to be able to challenge the head coach without being worried that he's going to say, yeah, you know what, I'm firing you. As long as it's respectful. Respect is 10 times more important than wanting to hang out. Hell, guys that are married don't want to hang out with their wife all day either. That's why you go to work sometimes. I got to get away from it. So, and I'm sure the wives feel the same way. I'd go nuts if I had to hang out with anybody that long. It actually enhances the relationship because you're like, oh, I can't wait to see him again.
Yeah.
And if you get a partner that's great, you two and me with my partner, then it's awesome going to work in the morning. I don't need to hang around him all day. I need to respect him. And if you like him, then it's a double duty, and I'm fortunate to have that.
What are the chances they can save the season? Because, Occam's razor, you say, what is the most logical thing? That's probably the most logical thing is the wheels come off here, and they're desperately trying to hire Pete Carroll or Mike Vrabel or Bill Belichick in the offseason. But you do get a bump. I mean, Jeff Saturday won his first game in Indianapolis. They go out there. You got a new play caller. There's clearly talent all over this team. Something wasn't clicking, whether it was Saleh or not. And this is a good Jets core that has a division where there's some upward mobility there, Sal's. What percentage chance do you give it that this actually gives them a bump and works out for them?
What's their record right now again?
I think they've won 2 games.
2 games, 2 and 3, 2 and 2. Do they have a bye week? No, we don't have a bye week. Are they 2 and 3 or 2 and 2? Regardless,
2 and 3.
There you go, 2 and 3. I'm going to say this, and it's probably going to fall on some deaf ears, or people maybe will disagree with me. That you mentioned talent. The quarterback's better than he's playing. Now, if you'd have said they're keeping everything the same, what do you think? If you'd asked me this question and they'd have lost to Minnesota and Saleh would have been there, I'd have said, because I picked them to win the division at the beginning of the year, and they're playing nothing like it. So far I've missed, but I know this. We're in October. We've only played 5 games. Hell, 12 games to go. I'll be more shocked if they don't go and play better football than if they play shitty football the rest of the year. There's a new energy. We saw it with Antonio Pierce with the Raiders for a minute. We've seen it. Now you got to sustain it. It can't just be for a week. It's got to be buy-in. That's the key. Listen, I know this. Motivation is temporary. What is it? Motivation is temporary, but gosh dang it. I have a great saying. I'll pull it. But I can tell you this. Motivation is temporary. That I do know. So the buy-in part of it, you got to be committed to it because, hey, you go win a game, we're all rah-rah. The commitment to the buy-in and what you're trying to get accomplished is far more important than one game rah-rah motivation. I'll tell you when motivation wears out, when you get the shit kicked out of you and you lose a game, well, that motivation went out. Where's the energy now? You've got to have buy-in with your teammates because motivation can come and go. It's not permanent. It's speeches and team meetings. I'll be shocked if the Jets don't start to play better football, different play caller, get the ball in the right people's hands. And Ulbrich hopefully brings a leadership where this is the way we're going to do it. We'll be flexible, but we're going to go with this type of leadership. I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs. They will play better football. So if we're sitting here in 2 months and this team's still reeling, then the whole house will be cleared. But I would say that he's going to make a stand for keeping this job if he can go and get on a roll. I would bet that they're going to play better than they have. I would bet on that.
Sean, I got a couple names to read out for you before my question. Left tackle, Vidarian Lowe. Left guard, Michael Jordan. Center, Nick Leverett. Right guard, Michael Onwenu. Right tackle, Demontre Jacobs. Those were the 5 starting offensive linemen for Jacoby Brissett before the last game. Would you feel comfortable at all sending Drake May out in front of those, behind those 5 dudes who I think only Onwenu is a solid starter in the National Football League?
No, I didn't want to tell you. Michael Jordan was a hell of a basketball player and tried to play baseball. Now he's playing interior lineman for the
impressive.
It's incredible. The guy's unbelievably versatile. No, I wouldn't feel comfortable, but I can tell you this: it'll ramp up the urgency. What Brissett brings, and I love his as a teammate. I love what he's about. But they got to throw the ball better. And so, no, while I'm not uncomfortable, I know this, that Drake May can move. He moves around pretty good. And I'm not worried about Drake May's confidence. I'm not. If Drake May goes in there and gets knocked around a little bit, oh, well, we got to expect if he folds on me after 2 games because he's got hit or he threw a pick, then he ain't going to be worth the powder it takes to blow him to hell and back anyway. Now, do I think that's going to happen? And he's playing against a team that's at the top of the league in pressures this year. Pressure percentage, the Texans are at the top of the league. But this isn't because they're playing the opponent. This decision has been made because they're looking for a spark, like a lot of teams are trying to find. For the Saints, they weren't looking for a spark. They're playing Spencer Rattler. All these things come to fruition. Maybe the guy's got to elevate. It wasn't going to help, so why not a change? And Brissett, while a cagey veteran, was not making enough throws. Can Drake May? We'll see. I have zero idea how Drake May is going to play and what they're going to do to protect him or how they're going to get the bandwidth of a really average personnel on offense to get him going. But he gives you a better chance throwing the ball, and Brissett will be a great help for him. But, yeah, offensive line, if you don't build your team inside out from the offensive line and defensive front first, you're probably going to struggle. It's got to start there, and this will be a struggle. But I can tell you this, I'm not worried. If you're asking the question saying, would you feel comfortable? No. I don't feel comfortable with Brissett back there. He doesn't need to be the guy getting his ass kicked too. Bloody a little bit of a nose. We're going to find out about Drake May's toughness and find out about if he can handle some failure. He'll have some successes, and he'll be able to throw the ball a little more pure. But I've never worried about it. And I've said this to you, Chad, for years. If I'm worried about the confidence of a guy, I should have done more due diligence. If he can't handle success and failure, then he ain't going to be worth it. Now, if this happens for 3 years and he's getting the hell kicked out of him like David Carr did, well, then it may change the course of your career.
Yeah.
But right now, during the season, where am I going to go? Find another guy on the scrap heap in line? I got to do. It's incumbent upon the coordinator also to get the ball out quick, to bandwidth, to make sure you're doing formations. The key for a young quarterback is to make it look to the defense like it's a whole bunch of shit you're putting in, confusing, and make it simple for the offense. They can scale it down, 10, 12 throws, 5 runs, but a lot of different movement formations and personnel groupings, and let it rip. I wouldn't suggest they run 7-step drop like the Redskins used to do with Rip and Stan Humphries and Theismann and Doug Williams, and let him hold the ball and take 3 hitches, or he'll end up not only getting Gatorade, but we'll be visiting him in a boot after he gets his ass kicked. So, and the Texans are going. I'm telling you, they are going to bring all kinds of different looks to confuse him, to force him to throw the ball to the other team. But I always want to know how tough my quarterback is young, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. Can he handle failure? He'll go through some of it, but I think throwing the football, he actually poses a bit of a problem if he's got a little bit of protection. The coordinator is going to have to do a great job of scheming this week.
All right, so on the other side of the coin with a rookie quarterback, Sal's, is one that's playing as well as any quarterback in the league. In fact, CBS Sports released their power ranking for their top quarterbacks, and he's above several guys that have been there and done that. But I wanted to show you this Photoshop that's been going around the internet, because here in Washington, D.C., everybody's very, very excited, as well they should. They have a fantastic young rookie quarterback. But in 2012, we had something going on that felt very much like this. So when you take a look at the numbers between Robert Griffin III and Jaden Daniels, they're strikingly similar, and the excitement is strikingly similar. Now, it is a completely different ownership group, coach, everything, 2 different individuals. I would say Jaden Daniels has already shown me behind a microphone that he gets it better than Robert Griffin III did. I hope that means he also gets it about learning to protect himself and all that. But in comparing the two, there's such a recency effect now in the media, and what's happening now, this is the first time. I remember I was doing a lot of radio when Griffin took the city by storm in a way that I've never seen, and it ended about as horrifically as it possibly could up until this date. When you watch them play, how many similarities do you see? How many comparisons are justified here? And does anything that happened in 2012 have anything to do with what's happening right now with this exciting young phenom?
Absolutely not. I used to go on all the time in DC with you. Mm-hmm. And I have said, when Griffin was a rookie, remember I said he may be a 4,000-yard passer and a 1,000-yard rusher if this keeps up. Now, how long can he do that and sustain it the rest of his, and getting beat up? To me, and maybe I'm wrong here, it feels like there's more leadership and handling of the teammates better with Jaden Daniels than Robert Griffin. And listen, I think Robert's a good guy, and I know he's an opinionated guy. I also feel like there's less I confess he did it with Jaden Daniels. I confess it's the other guy's fault, right? And I the run-in with the Shanahan and how they handle it. And I'm not saying he wasn't a good teammate, Robert Griffin, because early on he was. When you're going good, it's easy to be that. I feel like Jaden Daniels will be a more consistently pure-throwing, accurate passer. We know they both got great speed. Robert Griffin was a track guy who can run and became a hell of a quarterback. And had he stayed healthy, we might have had a different thought process. But ownership, coaching, everything's changed. And Jaden Daniels was probably, and they both had good coaches in college that knew offense. I just feel almost like Jaden Daniels has settled in as a rookie. I felt Robert Griffin at times, the way he handled it, was a rookie overall. Now, he played unlike a rookie. I feel like Jaden Daniels is a 5th-year, 6th-year veteran handling all the distractions that go on playing quarterback. Maybe I'm wrong, because I preached how good Robert Griffin was when he came in as a rookie, and for whatever reason, it's different. It is different. Coaching staff's different. Cliff Kingsbury is a different coordinator. I mean, I'm all in on Jaden Daniels. I was last year at LSU. I love his accuracy. The numbers are pretty awesome when it comes to comparing the two, how eerily close they are. I think overall, but you're right. The hits they take, if Jaden Daniels does not learn that sliding and getting out of bounds at times is your friend, we won't be having this conversation on a regular. We'll be having the conversation. See, and a guy's banged up, and like I said, he is impressive. But part of the growth of his game is knowing when to do it and when to say when to get out and get down. I'm going to say leadership feels to me, and just the accuracy of the football. And I don't even remember what his completion percentage was as a rookie. But Jaden Daniels, for the most part, the ball doesn't hit the ground very often.
No.
I'm going to say advantage early on, maturity. Jaden Daniels more mature than Robert Griffin at this stage of their career.
This is the ranking I was referring to where CBS Sports has Jaden above, Sam Darnold, CJ Stroud, Dak Prescott, of course, Aaron Rodgers, everybody outside of the top 10. Only above him, Mahomes, Baker, Josh Allen, Purdy, Joe Burrow, and Lamar Jackson. That is some rarefied air for a rookie.
Yeah,
right there.
it is. Now, is this just for the week? Yeah, it's for the week. I mean, I'm looking at this. I agree with most of it. Josh Allen, if we're talking about the week and where they are, and Josh has had a good year. It was 9 of 30 against the Texans. Purdy struggled last week. Burrow's team's not winning, and Lamar's playing like an MVP. Mahomes is Mahomes. I would, C.J. Stroud and Jaden Daniels, I think you can keep them both up there. It reminds me of what I saw last year. C.J. Stroud did the same thing. He felt like he'd been in the locker room 3 or 4 years. Jaden Daniels, I'll bet you when you walk in there that they're magnetized him. I'll bet you when he walks into a room, guys kind of gravitate towards him. I believe it, and I know they did here. And he doesn't have to ask for it. There's no forced leadership, no fake leadership. I've seen it in coaches, and I've seen it in players. This is something that you didn't ask for. It just was heaped on you because, well, not only can you take it, but you perform with it, and they trust you under pressure. And if something goes wrong, even if you're not having a great game, do you elevate the guys around you? Stroud's done it here. We see guys do it. And it appears to me that Jaden Daniels, just being in that locker room, has made a big difference on how the Washington Commanders feel about themselves. And I know that sounds crazy, but it is contagious. Both the good and the bad. Toxic will kill you. We started to see that in Washington years ago when it came apart, and with the ownership was toxic a long time. It's different there now. And Jaden Daniels was the perfect fit for them. They made the right draft pick, and so did the Houston Texans. It's eerily similar how both those guys have made a phenomenal impact this early in their careers.
Got David Marksbury saying $5. Sal's spitting more wisdom. Indeed, he is, David. Thank you for the super chat. And I think, is this the quote you were looking for right there, Mr. Sean Salisbury? Motivation is temporary.
Discipline, right? And I was just looking at my phone,
forever.
and I wrote this down. It might have been Saban, or I can't remember who said it, but it's so true. And you think about motivation. I need a motivational speech. Well, motivational speech is fine until the guy across from you is whooping your ass regularly. The discipline of, are you going to be disciplined, not disciplined? Because failure is going to come at times. Discipline to fight through. Discipline is permanent. Discipline's etched into your DNA, and the motivation is, hey, I got a great guy. He gave me a good speech, but I walked out there. I forgot what he said an hour later because something else came up. Now, I'll take discipline over motivation all day, and I think that's probably as important buy-in discipline as anything that happens with your head coach and your quarterback, and we can see that impact and how it permeates through locker rooms, both good and bad.
Great stuff every week, Sals. Thank you so much for making time, buddy. I know
you guys are awesome.
Great conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
The great Sean Unfiltered on X. Go ahead and give him a follow. And then, of course, the Sean Salisbury Show in H-Town, best in the business. What do you think of that power ranking, young Gigantor? That is that's aggressive.
Look, CBS Sports has gotten a little bit clickbaity the last couple years with some.
They're not over their skis, have they?
A little bit. Purdy at 3 is not appropriate for the 49ers being 2-3. That's unacceptable. I think Stroud should.
Burrow is fucking dealing. Burrow could be 1. I mean, I know that their record is horrific, but he's leading the league in many passing categories quietly while they lose.
That's why I'm not rooting out the Bengals just yet, because the last couple weeks he's thrown big time touchdowns, a lot of yards, commanded the offense. Baker at 5 always makes me nervous because at the end of as fun as Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay is, I don't think he's a better quarterback than Mahomes or Stroud, or I think he's probably on the level of Dak. I would swap him and Stroud right now with that 5 and 9 spot. But it's a CBS Sports graphic. I think a lot of it is trying to get me to quote tweet it and react and say, "Oh, you're so wrong."
Where's Kirk on this list?
Kirk should be. Kirk's doing good. I don't need Kirk crashing.
Kirk is playing top 10 right now. You can't fucking. This is a week 6 power ranking tour, not an all-time power ranking. Kirk should be in any top 10 after the way he played last Thursday night.
2 weeks ago, he hasn't thrown a touchdown against the Steelers he lost to a kicker, and he also didn't throw a touchdown in a gritty win against the Saints where the defense special teams scored 2. I'm fine with him being at 11 or 12. I think that's appropriate for Kirk. I like how the team is playing right now. I don't need much more light shown on them.
I don't think Sam Darnold played particularly well when they beat the Jets. He got his So one of the parts I want to get back to this. I want to get back into this because honestly, the whole show could be about it. I'm glad you asked about Drake May because Sal's knows quarterbacks, and I wanted to ask him about Jade. But first and foremost, we do accept super chats on both types of sports. Thank you to Rick Austin for acknowledging that. 11-11, 4 sticks for Harper and Eagle. Were you there, sir, in the basement of the old Shabine where we packed them in? There was at least 75 people way back in 2014, whatever the fuck that was. Thank you, Rick. Appreciate that. And, of course, thank you, David, for being our super chatters for the day. The part about this where the owner is a crazy man, okay? So here's the things I've heard brought up, Tor, is I've heard he's an ambassador to London. Or England. He had a bunch of people there at that game, and he was personally embarrassed. The Lebanese flag that was on Robert Saleh, the owner didn't like that. And, New York is a town that is very high Jewish population. The part about it where Zach Wilson is on the Denver Broncos and Sam Darnold, of course, is the starting quarterback for I believe that ego is a component in most things that billionaires do. I think you have to have an ego to get to those places, mostly unless it purely is an inheritance type of deal. But I really do believe that if we pushed all of that aside and just looked at Robert Saleh and said, this is a guy that's 20-36, and it looks like he doesn't have control of this team, and it looks like they're not prepared. I understand he sat in on his first offensive meeting, but you're ultimately, as the head coach, responsible for the offense, and the offense is atrocious, and it has been for quite some time. They didn't hire a defensive coordinator, Tor. They hired a head coach. How much of it do you think is all of that drama that everybody now is just spitting out all over the place? And how much of it is just we have a good team. There's a guy that Kyle Shanahan wanted. Let's give him a run at this because, Robert Saleh has shown us exactly who he is as a head coach. I don't care that it's unconventional. Let's just make this move and see if we can get a spark.
I think the most believable out of the drama is the London billionaire situation where you're trying to go flex your big money, and then the old money is looking at you like, oh, this is your product. Oh, look at me. Look at my Premier League team. We're doing okay. So I think that definitely could have stoked some of the flames. Woody Johnson has had, some drama before.
Ambassador Johnson.
Pardon me. Ambassador Johnson.
Disrespectful.
Has not been without drama, as many NFL owners are. That's why I respect my owner, Arthur Blank, so much, because he's just a good dude that's going to lower the prices, stand on the sideline in his Grim Reaper suit when the coach is bad, and then we're just going to keep on moving forward. The Jets are a calamity, and calamities in the NFL don't get resolved unless they win the lottery. And the lottery is the CJ Stroud ticket. The lottery is the Jaden Daniels ticket. You just don't will yourself out of the pit anymore by having a running back that can go for 1,000 yards and a defense that averages letting up 21 points a game. You need that guy. You need the franchise cornerstone. The Jets looked like a team early last year that could have really been one of those oddities where they could take a backup quarterback there to the playoffs and be feisty with their defense and their run game. They weren't. And now these guys are a year older. Rodgers looks 2 years older, and the head coach looked like he died 5 weeks ago on the sidelines. So
okay.
their window closed very quickly.
It did. And I think you're right, unless you're the Ravens. I mean, teams have done it. Like what you're talking about. They've won with, we've got a great running back. We can play defense. We can generate turnovers. I think you can go on week 12 on, you go on a run at the end of the season, you win a game on the road in the postseason, you find yourself in the Super Bowl, and then it's a one and go. Like we've seen teams do that, but you're right, for sustainable success. What about the part of this tour where Ambassador Johnson went to Saleh and said before that Vikings game, listen, this is a must win. You can't come out here and play like you did against the Denver Broncos at home and lose the way that you did against Bo Nix. He said that to him. It's documented. And there was some sort of a disconnect there where I guess Robert Saleh didn't think that meant your job is on the line. I guess in radio, I assumed my job was on the line every fucking day. Like every time I fucked up a read, every time I pissed off a sponsor, every time, one of the teams didn't like something I said, I'm like, I could get fired. How is Robert Saleh going into, he knows He knows how important that game is to the owner. He knows the owner didn't hire him. By the way, the owner's brother hired Robert Saleh, which has been pointed out quite a bit. I think that's a big deal. How much resentment was built up the whole time? I didn't even fucking hire this guy. I go out of the country for 11 months and I come back and, we've got this defensive coordinator that I wasn't steamed up for. And he still let him, go into this season as the head coach in what a very important season for the league. That's the part of this where I don't understand that. I don't know if Robert Saleh could have done anything differently, but why he was gobsmacked and why he was surprised when the owner came to him and said, you got to win this next game. What else did that mean?
I think it will be very interesting to look at how the Miami Dolphins finish the season with their personnel after Stephen Ross basically said, I pumped the money in, you bastards, win me some games. And to see if the Miami Dolphins coaches are shocked, if they're sitting at 4-13, if they're all still there or not. Like owners are going to tell you what they want. And if Saleh had that team as prepared as they could have been versus the Minnesota Vikings, and he did everything to a T and just became physical mistakes and not mental errors, so be it. That's how the chips fell. But that Jets team exuded no confidence for walking into that game in London. For me to think, oh, they're going to hang in there. Oh, the Vikings, they're not rolling them away in the first half, but no, you knew in the second half they were going to crumble. I didn't think it was going to be immediate firing after necessarily, but the writing was on the wall that if it started getting messy, some heads were going to fall in New York.
All right, here's what's messy is we have 112 viewers across all platforms. We only have 28 likes on YouTube. And this show ends unless you motherfuckers get us up to 50 likes. I mean, the fact that I have to beg for 50 likes is embarrassing, but we better get it done. I'm willing to be embarrassed. Get over there and hit that like button. It don't cost nothing. Yo, that costs something. Corey Rita with a Jesse Pinkman. As a Skins fan, it's refreshing not to be a team with the Jets issues during the season. You are correct, sir. $49.99. Thank you so much, Corey Rita. I can tell that Tor was very impressed by my Jesse Pinkman bit that I just did for this pink super chat that we got. What about that, Tor? I mean, the fact, and I think we touched on this on the Monday episode, but the fact that the Jets are doing Jets things and the Browns are doing Browns things, and I know the Jags won this past week, but the Jags are doing Jags things, and you're just sitting there with Washington with your cup of tea or your big old fucking goddamn stogie saying, oh my God, that's almost as good as winning, is not being mired in dysfunction like these other fucking dysfunctional assholes are.
All an NFL fan wants from their team is to not be embarrassed. You just don't want to be a fan of a team that embarrasses you, where you're walking into your office or you're hopping on a Zoom meeting now and people are mixing it up about the weekend. Oh, hey, Brandon, what's your team? Oh, you're a Jets fan? Ooh, tough going. How many times have Skins fans had to walk in their buildings on a Tuesday and look at all the other team fan, Philly fan, whoever you could have been a Cowboys fan, a Chargers fan. They all had it better than you for so much longer, not because their teams were infinitely better or you were going 0-16, but because they didn't respect your team because they were a clown show. To not be a clown show is so vitally important to keeping fans around.
So when you say not be embarrassed of a team, and that's all that you want as a goal, would you count this as something to be embarrassed about, Tor, when you go out and spend the type of money Tennessee did on Calvin Ridley and he has 9 receptions for 141 yards and 1 touchdown, tied for 46th, 98th. This is tied for 136th in receptions. It's not his fault, by the way. I'm in no way blaming Calvin Ridley for his atrocious stats, but I am mad at the dirt about it.
Yeah, it's the Calvin Ridley syndrome. A young receiver with so much speed and foot quickness, and he's a training camp hero. And I watched him in Atlanta. He made big plays in Atlanta, but he never made the play. He was never the guy that could stay on his feet and run it into the end zone. He's not the guy.
Will Levis, Tor, you're trying to. You're a scorned ex-lover. I already know what this is about. He's got Garbosh behind center. That's what that's all about.
Even in Jacksonville last year, he was not that guy. And it was supposed to be scary offense with the Jags, and I bought in because Ridley came off the gambling suspension, and now he's in Florida with a quarterback and not with Taylor Heineke throwing him the ball. And I bought in, and I look like a foolish fool.
And Taylor Heineke's Steve Young compared to what he has this fucking season. I don't want to hear it. Corey, thank you so much, buddy. All right, this is Rodgers, and I'm sure everybody's seen this, but this is what he said. He didn't want to dwell on, him being blamed for Saleh being fired, but here's him on McAfee earlier talking about it. Kind of trails off at the end, so forgive me.
Any of the ridiculous allegations out there, I'm not going to spend more than one sentence in response to it, and that is that I resent any of those accusations because they're patently false. And it's interesting the amount of power that people think that I have, which I don't. But I love Robert, and it was, one of those days yesterday.
The fuck? I don't know if that's. Let's just say we live in a world where everything said about Aaron Rodgers is not true in regards to this particular instance. Let's say that he wasn't made aware of it. He came home. He does like Robert Saleh. It's one of the reasons he was there. He came out and said all this. So you're saying he's a bold-faced liar. Okay, we'll start there. Mm-hmm. And then secondly, he's responsible for this man that has 1,000 kids no longer being with the organization. I would resent the shit out of that too. And I do believe, maybe I'm fucking naive, I think the truth is closer to what Rodgers is saying than what Florio and everyone else out there that has decided he's the biggest piece of shit on the planet has decided. I think the more that we learn about this, it does feel like it's all Woody Johnson. It does feel like it's all the owner that is doing something he probably wanted to do before now. Now, whether or not Aaron Rodgers should have thrown his body over the grenade and said, "You will not fire," why would he do that? Like, maybe he does believe there could be a spark. But if we're going to go with where the blame pie is shifted for Robert Saleh being fired, I'm going to give most of it to Woody Johnson and then the second most amount to Robert Saleh and then everybody else, including Aaron Rodgers after that.
I think the most telling sentence in that debrief that he gave was, "I don't have as much power as you think I do." Not saying he doesn't have it's not saying he doesn't have any power. A 40-year-old quarterback that's a starter in this league, that's won a Super Bowl and multiple MVPs, has some say and some sway. But to kind of cool the waters and say, it's not as much as you think I do. It's not as much to get a coach fired at the end of the day, even if I'm disagreeing with him. It was a really strong answer from Rodgers to not only cover his bases, but also subtly say, "Hey, this wasn't all on me, pal."
They're also trying to paint him in the latest interview because he's trying to get all his lies right. He's trying to get his shit together. No, they're playing on Monday night. That's the way the week fell. People are so desperate to catch this guy in bullshit. And look, he's prickly and he's fucking fighting guys on the sideline and he was fighting guys in training camp. And he doesn't really act like a quarterback should act at times. All that's true. He probably would admit to that. But people are just so fucking desperate to grab it. Here's another one that I heard, Tor, because I've just been unfortunately consuming way too much of this content because it's salacious and it's over the top. One of the things that I keep hearing is, "Oh, they signed Allen Lazard." And well, first of all, Allen Lazard has actually been playing really well now that he's healthy. I know that he was a bag of wet hair last year, but who wasn't offensively? Randall Cobb got brought in. Who would sign? Look, this is from 2012. Peyton Manning, former Colts teammates may follow quarterback to Denver. Rob Gronkowski, where did he show up when Tom Brady signed in Tampa Bay? You're saying that if you have a quarterback that is 3-time MVP, Super Bowl champion, has had more success than most modern-day quarterbacks, you wouldn't bring in a couple of pieces to make him comfortable? Why is that so egregious? Why does everyone lose their fucking mind? I would do that for any quarterback that I gave up for what I gave for Aaron Rodgers, to try to make him more comfortable. That's part of what you should be. That's part of the complimentary package. Here is your free decaf coffee. Here is your bag of detergent. Thank you for staying in our hotel.
The fans get overly emotional about things like this. Dan Quinn brought in Olamide Zaccheaus, who played under him in Atlanta. All right. Coaches have their guys. When Ron Rivera was in Washington, how many Carolina Panthers players started migrating up north? It was half the team. It's if you are a coach or a player and you feel like you have a good relationship, good rapport, they respond to my style of play, they respond to my style of coaching. I want that guy in the building. It's a smart play. If you are Peyton Manning and you're saying, Dallas Clark is coming out of retirement for me here in Denver, please come on, Dallas. Don't play with any gloves. Get rocked upside your head and catch 5 touchdowns for me.
You think that was actually word for word the text on the two-way that he sent him back in those days?
I don't
flipped
think
out the sidekick. Get
I don't think
rocked
I'm too
upside
far
your
off.
head, asshole.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Oh, Mike from Don't Sleep. Another Jesse Pinkman. The Commanders winning the division by 2 or 3 games just feels great. I'm so happy. I'm not even cursing about it. God bless. Wait a minute. Are you saying winning the division right now or ultimately? Because there is a shitload of football still to play, Mike from Don't Sleep. Mike, look, I really appreciate the $49.99 super chat. You're a mensch. You are feeling yourself a little bit too much about Washington right now.
Look, I am almost giving them a pass for the fifth. We're 5 weeks into the season for this excitement. There's like 3 teams in the NFL that are generating that. You got like Lions fans right now, Commanders fans, and Vikings fans. And I think Vikings fans are still waiting for the other shoe to drop, personally. But if these people want to get fired up through 5 weeks, I think they're well within their rights for how well their teams.
Hold on, Tor. They're playing the Ravens this weekend. You can't keep it in your pants until you beat if they beat the Ravens in Baltimore, fuck yeah, get fired up. That is your coming out party. All right. Beating the Bengals is not your coming out party. Beating the fucking beating the Cleveland Browns are one of the worst teams in football right now. Yeah, you stomped on them, you murdered them, you sent your fans home happy. It's great. It's awesome. You scored 30 plus points. You check all the boxes. Go out there, do the same thing on the road to Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson and to that team. Hey, man, sign me up. Yeah, they're going to win the division. They beat the Ravens and Jaden Daniels stays healthy for 8-9 more weeks out of the season. Yeah, they're going to win the division. You should start wisening up to that fact.
I think it was Jones from Jenkins and Jones on the Volume Network. That he's a Skins fan. He's saying, I don't really care about this Ravens game. I don't. You win or lose, it is what it is. I care about them playing the Panthers the week after. And that's going to be a big key for what this Washington team does. Because if they win and they have a hangover and they lose to the Panthers, then that hurts. And if they lose and then they roll the Panthers, then okay, we're still on track. We're still moving in the right direction. I think they smoked the Panthers, but that is some of the more, I think, rational. There's a lot of football left for the Skins to have played for the season.
See, I disagree with that. And look, it's an interesting take. And you're right. Rebounding from a loss that's what championship teams do. We saw the Chiefs do that last year, Tor. How many times have we talked about that swoon they had in the middle of the season and they just went to win, by a nut hair for the rest of the remainder of the season to have a championship to show for it. But these Skins fans, they're having delusions of grandeur, and this is your measuring stick. This is a team that was in the AFC Championship game. This is a team that has 2 MVP candidates on the roster. It's a team that has a great head coach and has a real home field advantage, and has been one of the regardless of all the crime surrounding the players, it's one of the healthier organizations in all of sport for continuity, for a general manager, for developing draft picks. Their draft picks getting paid elsewhere and not performing the way they do for the Ravens. Like, they've been doing this for decades. So if you think you're aspiring to be that, beat this team, because it's not an unbeatable Ravens team.
Right.
They've lost games they should have won. They've needed miracles like they did this past week to win games. You're like, I didn't think it would take. I think that the measuring stick is this week. And I think they roll the Panthers regardless. They're not the team that goes out and does what we always expect is, here's the Philadelphia Eagles, here's the Giants, you shall lose no matter what the records are. They've already proven to me that they're not that this season.
That's some of the old hurt, I think, shining through.
Yep.
But Ravens, last time I looked, 6.5-point favorites versus the Commanders in this one. I did 2 years ago, 3 years ago. 3 years ago, they would have been 10, 12-point favorites, 11.5. You're looking at a crazy line, but Vegas has Washington staying within a touchdown as the underdogs in this matchup, which I think shows a little bit of respect.
What do they know? I wonder. I don't know. 6.5 feels like a lot with how many points that they've been scoring. I mean, you could pencil in 28 points with this offense each and every week. I mean, I feel like Brian Robinson's got 2 touchdowns every week now. So I don't know. I find that disrespectful. You think that means that they actually think that the Commanders have arrived, that they're not more than 7-point underdogs?
It's been a long road just for the casual observer in Washington also. I think also Marlon Humphrey was in a walking boot this week, and he is one of their premier defenders on the outside.
All right, thank you to go ahead.
I was just saying their defense is loaded anyways.
Thank you to Mike for Don't Sleep. Don'tSleepEnergy.com. Use the Dukes promo code. That is a very generous super chat, my friend. This is something I pulled from Albert Breer's podcast, SI.com. some of that salacious backstory you were talking about, Tor, with Ambassador Johnson and why maybe the shit went down the way that it did.
Johnson's patience with the situation had run thin. But if you want to dig further into the past, there are a couple of things that signal why this decision was made as quickly as it was this year. First of all, an important nuance to the decision is that Robert Saleh was not Woody Johnson's hire. This was a hire that was made by Woody's brother, Christopher Johnson, who really, really liked Robert Saleh.
A lot is made of that, Tor, but there's no chance he didn't get his brother's okay. There's no chance he didn't send a quick email and say, hey, I like this guy. He's ripped and he's got a bald head and he looks good on the sidelines for the San Francisco 49ers, right? Like we all would have sent that text regardless of who our brother was.
I would say so. I also would need less cuts in this clip.
A lot of cuts.
The quick cutting, now industry standard, just to save half of a second. I've had to do that many times, and
I do it all the time.
Very frustrated. I think it looks bad. Have a host that can speak for a minute and 15 seconds and get their thoughts out there. If you want them to do it,
you don't want that.
An SI short.
Yeah, it's got to be a 37 seconds, and it's got to be vertical.
Then there's what happened less than 2 years ago. Niners head coach Kyle Shanahan called the Jets on Jeff Ulbrich. That name, of course, is important now because he's the interim coach. The interest of Kyle Shanahan piqued Woody Johnson's interest. And
it should, by the way. If Kyle Shanahan wants somebody, then you should take note of it. And I looked up Ulbrich because I knew that he played Tor, but he made a lot of tackles with the 49ers. He coached under Pete Carroll. He coached at the college level. Clearly, he coached under Kyle Shanahan. He was a head coach of the Senior Bowl. I think this past year they won. And he's very impressive. Like you saw him in that press conference that we played. He's just a guy. He reminds me of Dan Campbell a little bit, but less, just a little bit less, and I like that about Dan Campbell. But you do have to deal with that when he's up there saying stupid things sometimes.
Ulbrich. The idea of going to Jeff Ulbrich was an enticing one for Woody because of the interest that Kyle showed in bringing Ulbrich to San Francisco. Those two pieces, I think, are important pieces to look at here. The fact that Woody didn't hire Saleh in the first place and the fact that he had a guy in Ulbrich kind of had an eye on as a potential head coach.
It is interesting, man. It's a fucking... it is a tapestry of reasons. And Tor, you have the same anxiety level I do. Sometimes I think you might actually have it more. You have more the shit you're able to do to yourself in your own brain. Like you're able to create entire scenarios and timelines of what's happening and what people's motivations are. And I just put insane shit on the people that aren't thinking about me at all, but I'm positive that they're doing this because they want to. And I have to stop myself and be like, you're a fucking psycho. Like the only thing that's happening here is you're nuts. And if you're a billionaire and you own a football team and you're sitting there, Kyle wants this guy. Well, I've got this guy. Well, I got to get him out there. Like I got to do so. And if that's constantly eating at the back of his head this entire time, that probably wasn't an incredibly compelling reason why he made this move when he did.
I would agree. The constant turmoil for the top tier decision makers in professional football has to be immense. I know that I saw some Falcons hurt on the timeline still about Ulbrich, who decided that Takkarist McKinley would be a better defensive end than TJ Watt, and he let him fall to the Steelers. So I'm not sure about the player evaluation, but as a coach, he hasn't shown me anything at this point to have any distrust. If he was a guy that was drawing the interest, go ahead, give it to me. I know everybody was really angry about Jeff Saturday when he got hired.
It was ridiculous.
And it maybe, but if he went out there and won some games as an interim and they decided let's roll with it, my sample size isn't large enough for me to think that he couldn't do the job as a former NFL center and a long time legend of the Indianapolis Colts.
But isn't that what we saw with Pierce? I mean, isn't that the exact thing that's unfolding now with Las Vegas, and that isn't working out for them?
Oh, I'm still holding out hope on Pierce. With the guard, you can't win game. For me personally, I don't think Pierce has been put in any position to succeed with the quarterbacks that they've been rolling out in Vegas with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell and his big stupid meme mustache.
Okay, but was Robert Saleh before Aaron Rodgers? Robert Saleh has had Zach Wilson, injured Aaron Rodgers, that disaster from last year. I mean, you can make that argument about any one of these. Matt Rule. I mean, could you not make that argument about any of these shitty coaches that get fired? It's like, okay, they didn't have a quarterback. Okay. you're right. And they're still fired, and they're still not getting another opportunity to coach in the NFL.
Well, the head coach is the first one to go, and that's just the cold truth of the NFL, where you just it falls on you first, and then unless you throw a coordinator under the bus beforehand, and then you try to buy yourself a couple more weeks.
I've watched so much of this shit, I forgot who said it, but someone made a great point that, like, you have a bad season, it's the quarterback. You have a bad couple of seasons, it's the coach. When you have sustainable bad seasons, you've got to go all the way up to the top, and of course that would be the ownership group. DreamStayGetaways.us is our official sponsor and sponsoring us all football season long. Thank you so much to them. DreamStayGetaways.us. Check out the website. They're on Instagram. If you're going to go to Universal, you're going to go to Disney. This winter, you probably want to wait until it dries out a little bit down there. I saw some incredible footage of the Devil Rays Stadium where the roof. Did you see that drone footage, Tor?
Oh yeah, it got tore up.
Shit. There's water in the big sombrero, but in this winter, if you're looking to get out of the cold and get into the sun, and you want to avoid all of those Vrbo and Airbnb fees, please to be going DreamStayGetaways.us. You can see all their beautiful homes. They're great. They're on resorts, and you're going to save money not paying those goddamn fees. Thank you so much to them for sponsoring both types of sports. I am headed out to the Wrinkleneck Mules show tonight out in Winchester at the Monument. I hope to see some of you out there. What do you got going on, Gigantor? I imagine you're watching the game.
I will be watching the 2-3 Niners versus the 3-2 Seahawks. A must win for San Francisco against.
You're not even kidding.
Against a scrappy at best Seattle team. Inconsistent is their middle name. But when Seattle is running the rock and they are moving that ball downfield, they can be pretty good. But the 49ers need to have a real reality check in this game and say, we need to blow out an in-division opponent. We cannot sit here, fall to 2-4 in this mess of a division where we still don't know what the Cardinals are. We can't let the Rams get healthy because we know they're going to take our butts later in the season. So getting ahead and getting this win against Seattle is paramount.
I picked the Rams to be in the NFC Championship game. Like I know you lose Cooper and Puka, I understand that, but I didn't think, why can't the Cardinals win the division? Like, why can't it's interesting if we look at where we thought that the NFC West would be, how ultimately important these early divisional games are going to be, because someone is going to find their identity. Either the Cardinals or the Seahawks are going to be better than we thought they were going to be, or the Rams and the 49ers are going to become who I don't know. When they start getting players back, I think we're going to look back at these divisional games. We're like, that was where all of the, the donuts were made. Well, thank you, brother man. Great show. And thank you to the great Sean Salisbury as well. Will I see you on Sunday for both types of sports game day edition?
I'm available on Sunday. Yes.
Let's do it. We'll be back right in between the 1 o'clock and the 4 o'clock game. Till that moment, please go to iTunes, go to Spotify, subscribe. Make sure you're following us on Twitter and Instagram, both types sports. It don't cost nothing. And until we see you on Sunday, friendos, go long, real long.
Hey, what do you got?
Both types of sports.
Yeah, what's it do? Go long, real long. Nice toss.
Both types of sports.